Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, even more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, our brethren in Kansas, our brethren in Georgia, in Texas, in Missouri, in Chicago, Illinois, in Fiji Island, and Mexico, Spain, in Africa, Zambia, Kenya, Pakistan, to the United Kingdom, and also to our brethren in Australia, and to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad. Greetings. May the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. And this is our special episode number 1 concerning the subject about Mount Carmel, or the most discussed subject among the media today concerning the headquarters. Now, I would like to read 2 TG 34 on page 19. It says, your choice, of course, would have to be, again, based on facts, not on assumption. And since the Bible itself has now become your only guide, your only teacher, you would have to consult it, and your choice would have to be made accordingly. 2 TG 34, page 19. In track number 9, on page 6, it says, in considering the several scriptures bearing on this point and on the kindred points in question, we must base our conclusions solely on the weight of evidence, so that we may not only know all the truth, but also teach nothing but the truth. And in answerer number 1, page 77, it says, the weight of evidence is the only fair and final criterion worthy of a Christian who must ever make an investigation for himself concerning purported truth. So the weight of evidence is the only fair and final criterion worthy of a Christian who must ever make an investigation for himself concerning purported truth. And the Shepherd's Rod declared clearly here in track number 7 on page 5. Track number 7, page 5. Believing that most of you will, before helping the one side or the other fire its guns, do as did Nathanael, John chapter 1, verse 45 to 51. Follow the example which the Lord has set before us, and respond to duty's challenge to investigate, to come and see. We trust that you will, in the ensuing pages, give unbiased consideration to the facts set forth. In the cover page of this track number 7, it says, that our Lord judge any man before it hear him, and know what he doeth. John 7, verse 51. Count the evidences in both sides before firing for or against. But we need to be very careful, brothers and sisters, that all the evidences that had been laid down, brothers and sisters, is based only in the golden bowl, because there are evidences by which the sources is outside the golden bowl, and the Shepherd's Rod called it outside sources. In track number 3, page 94, in order consequently to maintain the false idea resulting from his parent point of view, he is led to resort to outside sources. So the only sources that we need to accept is the golden bowl. Here in track number 11, page 12, it says, get your doctrine, brother, sister, only from the golden bowl, and be not like the waves of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. Be not carried about by the many winds of doctrine that are blowing wildly from every direction to cause you to lose your way to the everlasting kingdom. And to repeat again, to SR 289, it says, find your explanation from the golden bowl. It says, find your explanations in the bowl, and you will have no trouble in knowing the truth or of avoiding the ever-ready trap of deception. Thus, the difficulty in knowing the difference between truth and error is eliminated. This subject, I think, is easy to understand if we will dwell on the real picture of the whole story. Because concerning Mount Carmel, brothers and sisters, it is typological prophecy. And since it is typological prophecy, I would like to read 1SR Packet Edition. On page 73, it says, "So completely disarming the enemy of souls, the great designer of these typological truths leaves the reader free to make his own choice as to whether he will continue in the darkness or come out into the light of the Lord, no longer to wonder what church to join or what is truth and what is error." So this reading is perfectly corroborating to the statement in 2SR 255, saying, "As there is no type for that which is false, teachers of theories without a typical representation for their claims of so-called Bible truths, and those who believe in them are as the blind leading the blind. The types are worked out to expose the error and reveal the truth. The honest ones will shun the devil by embracing the facts and by walking in the light." So that is very plain, brothers and sisters, the statement given by the voice of inspiration. Now, let's begin our study reading one symbolic code, number 14, on page 5. One symbolic code, number 14, page 5. And in this study, I think it is even more important to follow the admonition given in Answerer number 5, page 29. Answerer number 5, page 29. It says, "And now, the only safe and sane procedure is to read closely every page of the solemn message contained in the Shepherd's Rod publications. Let not a line escape your attention. Study every word carefully and prayerfully. Be earnest and diligent in your perusal of truth, and prove all things. Hold fast that which is good." 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21. Now, let us now begin. One symbolic code, number 14, page 5. It says, "True, we are establishing our headquarters on this mount that is found in prophecy." So, the statement is very plain. B.T. Horeb says that the headquarters that they did establish in Waco, Texas, is found in prophecy. Remember, the Shepherd's Rod plainly told us on track number 6, page 4, it says, "By the prophecies only can we prove or disprove, know what we believe, and believe what we know, and with safety accept or reject any message." So by the prophecies only can we prove or disprove, and know what we believe, and believe what we know, and accept and reject, or with safety. You can accept that message with safety. You can reject that message with safety, because your decision is based on prophecy. Because the foundation of our faith must be prophecy. Evangelism 196. Prophecy is the foundation of our faith. If the foundation of our faith is not the prophecy, then, brothers and sisters, we will be misled. Because the prophecy, the sure word of prophecy, in track number 12, it says, on page 57, the Shepherd's Rod says that the sure word of prophecy, thus the more sure word of prophecy, which never fails to tell the truth. So only the sure word of prophecy, which never fails to tell the truth. So, if the thing is not found in prophecy, that is the statement in 2TG. 2TG 24, on page 15, it says here. Let's read the statement. "Here we are told that prophecy, a vision, is the acid test by which to judge purported Bible truth. That is, if the thing is not in prophecy, if there is no vision of it found in the writings of the prophets, then there is no truth in it." So the prophecy is the acid test, brothers and sisters, to judge purported Bible truth. And if there is no prophecy, there is no vision, brothers and sisters, then there is no truth in it. Now, of course, we base our study concerning the prophecy by the Shepherd's Rod publications, because the Shepherd's Rod says that when the rod is taught, the Bible and the Spirit prophecy are taught. It says here in page 55 in answerer number 5. The Bible and the books of the Spirit prophecy being the sole source of the Shepherd's Rod message. Therefore, when the rod is taught, the Bible and the spirit of prophecy are taught. So that is the only way that you could rest assured that that teaching is the true teaching of the Bible, if we explained it in the light of the Shepherd's Rod. Now let us go back to our reading in 1 Symbolic Code number 14, page 5. 1 Symbolic Code number 14, page 5. True, we are establishing our headquarters on this mount. That is found in prophecy. So, the establishing of the headquarters in Waco, Texas is found in prophecy. But our stay here shall be very, very short. For he will finish the work and cut it short in righteousness. Because a short work will the Lord make upon the earth. Romans 9 verse 28. It might be interesting to Elder G to know that the naming of our camp, Mount Carmel Center. So the naming of their camp, Mount Carmel Center, they named their camp, brothers and sisters, Mount Carmel Center, came about in the same way as the naming of our publications, the Shepherd's Rod. For we did not know beforehand that it was in prophecy until after our attention was called to Micah 7 verse 14 and Amos chapter 1 verse 2. So there are two prophetic verses mentioned here, Micah 7 verse 14 and Amos 1 verse 2. So Micah 7 verse 14 and Amos 1 verse 2 is linked together in this paragraph. Now, brothers and sisters, the statement says the naming of our camp is found in prophecy. What is the name? Mount Carmel. So let us now focus first to the name. The name Mount Carmel. Now, for sure, you cannot read any statement in the Shepherd's Rod publications that there is other place by which Mount Carmel could be found except only in Waco, Texas. In Waco, Texas, or in Texas, the Lone Star State. Now, let us read, brothers and sisters, the statement here in 3 Symbolic Code number 1, page 7. 3 Symbolic Code number 1, page 7. It says, it should ever be kept in mind that the very name Mount Carmel, so it points out to the name of the headquarters called Mount Carmel. Now let us read 3 Symbolic Code number 1, page 7. It should ever be kept in mind that the very name Mount Carmel indicates a place of test, and surely this is a place where we are being severely tested as to whether we will serve God or serve Baal. So what is Mount Carmel? Mount Carmel is a testing ground. Whether you will serve Baal or whether you will serve the God of Elijah. That is the statement. Now, here's another statement that I would like to read in Old Symbolic Code. Still in Old Symbolic Code. 4 Symbolic Code 4 to 9, page 6. 4 Symbolic Code number 4 to 9, page 6. But she, like many others, did not fully understand that this Mount Carmel, like the one in Elijah's day, is a testing ground for modern Israel. Now, I would like to read again. It says, 4 Symbolic Code 4 to 9, page 6. But she, like many others, did not fully understand that this Mount Carmel, like the one in Elijah's day. So here we can see that it is type and antitype. It says, like the one in Elijah's day, is a testing ground for modern Israel. Now, when does Mount Carmel became the testing ground? So we need to look at now to the picture. Now, I would like to read again the statement in 1 SR, page 124. It says, this is the statement given by the Shepherd's Rod. The picture tells the story. Symbols do not lie. Now, in 1 SR, 226. It says, 1SR 226, it says, the type themselves are not the true object, no more than a photograph is, but it is a representation which pictures. Remember, pictures do not lie, brothers and sisters, or the picture tells the whole story. Now let us read again. It says here, 1SR 226. The types themselves are not the true object, no more than a photograph is, but it is a representation which pictures an unmistakable evidence, the object in view. So, we need to look at the particular object in view, by which the particular object in view was portrayed through the typological representation, which pictured out with unmistakable evidence. Although, in track number 14, the shepherd's rod says, I would like to read page 6, track number 14. All of these counterparts then are but another scriptural intimation and confirmation of the age-old truth that history repeats itself and on a much broader scale than in the original. It says, history repeats of itself. So we need to look at now the picture, the history, brothers and sisters, because that history will be repeated again. Now, I would like to read, brothers and sisters, this statement. Old Symbolic Code. Here in Old Symbolic Code, 3 Symbolic Code, number 1, page 3. 3 Symbolic Code, number 1, page 3. It says, beginning from page 2, therefore, that every student, teachers, and resident of Mount Carmel Center faithfully stand in his lot, that he come behind in no good work, and that he keep apace the scrolls swiftly unfolding events, and thus make Mount Carmel a light to the world. We anxiously solicit the constant and earnest prayers of every whole-souled believer in the message of present truth. You see, brothers and sisters, it says unfolding events, that he keep apace the scrolls swiftly unfolding events. So I would like to focus to the statement unfolding events. Of course, the word unfolding events, we need to look at to how the history in the past will be repeated in the particular object in view. So, ponder deeply, brothers and sisters, because the shepherd's rod made it so plain that the very name Mount Carmel, should serve as a testing ground for the modern Israel. So there is no other testing ground that you can read in the shepherd's rod publications except Mount Carmel's the name Mount Carmel. The name Mount Carmel itself is a testing ground for the modern Israel. So if we will throw a question, what name of headquarters by which that name is given by God as a testing ground for the modern Israel? There is only one answer. The name Mount Carmel. There is no other. Brothers and sisters, you need to base your choice on facts, not on assumption. And that's why in the Great Controversy, page 505, it says, before accepting any doctrine or precept, we should demand the plain, thus saith the Lord, in its support. So before accepting any doctrine or precept, we should demand the plain, thus saith the Lord, in its support. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. So there is no other name by which the name of the headquarters, by which that name had been given by God as a testing ground for the modern Israel. Now, I would like to read, brothers and sisters, a statement here in 2TG 30, I think 39. 2TG 39, page 13. It says, Ezekiel obviously is especially figurative of this final effort of revival and reformation. Now, I would like to read again, 2TG 39, page 13. Ezekiel obviously is especially figurative of this final effort of revival and reformation. So when we'll be talking about final effort of revival and reformation, it is attached to the name antitypical Ezekiel. And we know, brothers and sisters, that only in Ezekiel chapter 4, by which you can read the divine command that God commanded His people to build a camp. And there is no other, brothers and sisters, prophecy concerning the divine command to build a camp is found only in the book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel chapter 4. And it is attached to that predicted final effort of revival and reformation. Now, brothers and sisters, I would like to connect one subject to the other in this study. Here in 1TG, I remember the statement in 1TG 42, on page 1TG 42, on page 20, let me see. By which the shepherd says that if possible, not one of us should miss this revival. 1TG 41:29 rather. It says, this chapter of Isaiah the prophet is indeed to bring revival and reformation. Of course, this revival and reformation is the final effort of revival and reformation. So I would like to read 1TG 41, page 29. This chapter of Isaiah the prophet is indeed to bring revival and reformation such as never taken place since the beginning of sin. God forbid that any one of us should miss the experience and the blessings that come through this revival and reformation. So, that should be also our prayers, that God forbid that any one of us, more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, should miss the experience and the blessings that come through this revival and reformation. Now, let us go back to our subject, brothers and sisters, concerning Mount Carmel. Now, here, brothers and sisters, in Prophets and Kings, let me see, the statement given by the voice of inspiration. I would like to read Prophets and Kings 161. Prophets and Kings 161. It says, but a reaction such as frequently follows high faith and glorious success was pressing upon Elijah. He feared that the reformation begun on Carmel might not be lasting and depression seized him. Now, where does the reformation begin? It was begun on Mount Carmel. Now, brothers and sisters, let us ask ourselves, what is the top of Carmel? Brothers and sisters, because it is the top of Carmel that had been predicted in Amos chapter 1 verse 2 that shall wither. It did not say Carmel shall wither, but the top of Carmel shall wither. So the first question is that, what is the top of Carmel? Now, I would like to read Testimonies for the Church, Volume 3. So let us read, brothers and sisters, on Testimonies for the Church on Volume 3. I would like to read this statement. Let me see if I can find that statement. Where Elijah the Tishbite, brothers and sisters, he established the altar of God in the top of Carmel. And it says, in the highest ridges, the place by which Elijah established the altar of God. 280. Where's the statement? Highest ridges. Okay, let us read. Elijah, I would like to read. Elijah fastens his eyes upon the highest ridge of mountains. Now let us read the dictionary, the word ridge. Word ridge. Because we need to study the history, brothers and sisters. Ridge, it says, is a long, narrow, elevated strip of land or any raised strip or band. So that is, or the other term is top. So here, brothers and sisters, let us go back. So the word highest is superlative degree. The word highest, brothers and sisters, is an adjective. An adjective has 3 degrees of comparison. The positive degree, high. The comparative degree, higher. And the superlative degree, highest. And superlative degree cannot use comparing only 2 objects. It must be applied at least 3 or more than 3 objects. So, let us now study closely, brothers and sisters, that the top of Carmel, it is Elijah. What is the thing in the top of Carmel? The altar of Jehovah. The altar of God had been established by Elijah in the top of Carmel, in the highest ridge of the mountain. It says, let us read, Volume 3, page 280. Elijah fastened his eyes upon the highest ridge of mountains, where had stood the altar of Jehovah, when the mountain was covered with flourishing trees and flowers. The blight of God is now upon it. All the desolation of Israel is in full view of the neglected, torn down altar of Jehovah, and in the sight are the altars of Baal. Now, I would like to read this statement in page 279. Let us read. 279, it says, the people assemble upon Mount Carmel, a place of beauty when the dew and rain fall upon it, causing it to flourish. But now its beauty is languishing under the curse of God upon this mount, which was the excellency of groves and flowers. They, as prophets, had erected altars for their pagan worship. Now tell me, when was the fulfillment of this event by which the only altars that you could see in Mount Carmel are the altars of Baal? Is it in the days of Withered? There is only one Mount Carmel in the days of Withered. That is why you cannot deny the history. From 1935 to 1955, that is the antitype in the historical event that Mount Carmel is very beautiful, flourishing, brothers and sisters. But when was the time by which Mount Carmel, brothers and sisters, gradually, I would like to read this reading in Prophets and Kings, and tell me, where is the antitypical fulfillment of this event? Let us read Prophets and Kings 123. The prophet's words went into immediate effect. Those who were at first inclined to scoff at the thought of calamity soon had occasion for serious reflection. For after a few months, the earth, unrefreshed by dew or rain, became dry and vegetation withered. As time passed, streams that had never been known to fail began to decrease, and brooks began to dry up. Yet the people were urged by their leaders to have confidence in the power of Baal and to set aside as idle words the prophecy of Elijah. Now in page 124, as year passes and yet there is no rain, the earth is parched as if with fire. The scorching heat of the sun destroy what little vegetation has survived. Streams dried up, and lowing herds and bleating flocks wander hither and thither in distress. Once flourishing fields have become like burning desert sands, a desolate waste. The groves dedicated to idol worship are leafless. The forest trees, gaunt skeletons of nature, afford no shade. The air is dry and suffocating. Dust storms blind the eyes and nearly stop the breath. Once prosperous cities and villages have become places of mourning. Hunger and tears are tailing upon men and beasts with fearful mortality. Famine with all its horrors comes closer and still closer. Now, I have an important question, brothers and sisters, to share to our brethren. Why is it that God raised up Elijah the Tishbite? Why is it? So we need to study the history. What is the principal reason why God raised up Elijah the Tishbite? Because what happened to Mount Carmel? All the altars that had been established in Mount Carmel are the altars of Baal. And that is one of the reasons that Withered could not be antitypical Elijah the Tishbite. Because when God raised up Elijah the Tishbite anciently, Elijah was in the desert. Elijah was in the mountain. Elijah is in the cave. It was not Elijah that resides Mount Carmel of old. Although there was a period of time by which Mount Carmel is flourishing. Now, let us read the statement here in one symbolic code. Let us read one symbolic code number 13, page 1 and 2. If Mount Carmel's center is to be true to its name and stand as an antitype of the ancient hill, so Mount Carmel is the antitypical Mount Carmel. The type is the Mount Carmel in the days of Elijah the Tishbite. So, in order to fulfill the prophecy, there must be headquarters to be established in Mount Carmel. Because if the Davidian did not establish headquarters in Mount Carmel in 1935. Then, how could we project now the antitype? That when God raised up Elijah the Tishbite of old, that is the time by which all the altars that had been erected in Mount Carmel is only the altars of Baal. There is no altar of Jehovah. It was completely broken down historically, brothers and sisters. And it was not established, the altar of Jehovah, not until the showdown. Now ponder deeply, brothers and sisters. Remember, I would like to repeat again, before the showdown, historically, the one that had been established in Mount Carmel of old are all altars of Baal. Now, I would like to read again the statement here in volume 3, page 279. It says, the people assemble upon Mount Carmel, a place of beauty when the dew and rain fall upon its causing it to flourish. But now its beauty is languishing under the curse of God. You know, in reality, it is more easier to recognize the curse of God when it is literal. Because they can see literally all the trees, the flowers, all the plants, the rivers dried, fountains. But in a spiritual aspect, it is very hard. Because it's hard for a human being to recognize spiritually that Mount Carmel, brothers and sisters, is dried up. There is no present truth. Now, I would like to read this reading in volume 3, page 279. It says, upon this mount, you see the same with the statement of Bethel. True, we are establishing our headquarters on this mount, which is found in prophecy. What prophecy? That had been fulfilled in the days of Bethel. The antitypical historical event that Mount Carmel is flourishing, is very beautiful. So that is the prophecy that had been fulfilled in the days of Bethel from 1935 to 1955. It is not difficult to understand, brothers and sisters. There is no top of Carmel, brothers and sisters, not until God raised up Elijah the Tishbite. Because it is Elijah the Tishbite that established the altar of Jehovah in the top of Carmel, historically. So, there must be an accurate significance of that predicted event in Amos chapter 1 verse 2. Now, let us read again the statement in volume 3, page 279. It says, upon this mount, which was the excellency of groves and flowers. You see, what mount? Mount Carmel, the excellency of groves and flowers. What happened? They as prophets had erected altars for their pagan worship. And it could not be applied in 1935 to 1955. That is the antitypical fulfillment of such historical event that Mount Carmel is flourishing, beautiful, brothers and sisters, spiritually. But what happened when Bethel died? That is portrayed the situation in the United States of America, the prophets of Baal. Now, I would like to read the description of the prophets of Baal. 2TG 41. 2TG 41, page 7. This scripture, you see, reflects the tragedy which took place on the top of Carmel in the days of Elijah. So when does that tragedy occur, brothers and sisters? On the top of Carmel. It says, in the days of Elijah. Elijah what? Elijah the Tishbite. Here we are given the hint that there is to be another showdown between the prophet of God and the prophets of Baal. But at this time, that historical event will no longer be repeated, that Elijah the Tishbite will let fire to come down from heaven. Because that event in our days, it is the false prophet that will let fire come down from heaven. In Revelation 13, from verse 13 to verse 14. Now, do not forget, it is Elijah who challenged the prophets of Baal. So it must be antitypical Elijah the Tishbite that will challenge all the prophets of Baal. Now, who are they, the prophets of Baal mentioned here? It says, the prophets of Baal in our day even boast that they are not inspired, that what they teach and preach is what they themselves discovered by deep study and research. Who are they, the prophets of Baal? They are those who do not claim to be inspired of the Lord. And they said that what they teach and preach is what they themselves discovered by deep study and research. That is the prophets of Baal, brothers and sisters. Of course, the prophet of God, that is inspired by the Spirit of God. Now, let us go back again to the reading in 1 Symbolic Code, number 13, pages 1 and 2. The only thing that we need to do is study closely. Look at the picture. Because the picture tells the whole story. And symbols do not lie. The symbolization of the picture do not lie. Now, let's read the statement here in 1 Symbolic Code number 13, page 1 and 2. It says, if Mount Carmel Center is to be true to its name and stand as an antitype of that ancient hill to which God called his people of old to prove who was the true God, then we, who are so highly privileged as to be among those chosen to pioneer this march up the mountain, must be very sure that we can do more than just say, the Lord, He is the God. The Lord, He is the God. Now the question, when does that declaration, the Lord, He is the God, the Lord, He is the God, had been proclaimed by the people anciently? Brothers and sisters, that is after such demonstration on the top of Carmel. Not before, brothers and sisters. That is the historical event. Now let's read Prophets and Kings. The time when the people declared, the Lord, He is the God, and the Lord, He is the God. 153 in Prophets and Kings. The people on the mount prostrate themselves in awe before the unseen God. They dare not continue to look upon the heaven-sent fire. They fear that they themselves will be consumed and convicted of their duty to acknowledge the God of Elijah as the God of their fathers to whom they owe allegiance. They cry out together as with one voice, the Lord, He is the God. The Lord, He is the God. Prophets and Kings, 153. When was that event? By which it was with one voice they cried together saying, the Lord, He is the God. The Lord, He is the God. After that contest, brothers and sisters, after that contest had been finished, when the fire came down from heaven. But to repeat again, brothers and sisters, at this time, that event will no longer be repeated, because such event will be repeated by the false prophet. He will let fire to come down from heaven. And that is why Alonzo Jones says that that event in the days of Elijah will be repeated no longer by God's prophet, but by the false prophet. He will let fire to come down from heaven. So in the antitype, it is broader in significance. So in what way now does Elijah will challenge all the prophets of Baal? That event will be repeated. That Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal, but that event will be repeated, but no longer a challenge to let fire come down from heaven. Brothers and sisters, although the same, brothers and sisters, there must be a challenge. Now, I would like to read here in 1 Symbolic Code number 13, pages 1 and 2. It says, if Mount Carmel Center is to be true to its name and stand as an antitype of that ancient hill to which God called His people of old to prove who was the true God, then we, who are so highly privileged as to be among those chosen to pioneer this march up the mountain, must be very sure that we can do more than just say, the Lord, He is the God. The Lord, He is the God. Lest we fall under the condemnation of the false prophet who were slain at the close of that memorable day when Elijah met the prophets of Baal on the ancient mount bearing the same name we have chosen, where we are now to be tested as to whether we will follow God or Baal. Now, this reading, brothers and sisters, of course, B.T. Hotep is cognizant to the fact that in the history, when the showdown of, when God raised up Elijah the Tishbite, Mount Carmel had been greatly apostatized. And the only altars that you can see are the altars of Baal. And the altars of Jehovah had been broken down. So B.T. Hotep is reminding them that if possible, that we can defeat that history. But the fact is that prophecy must be fulfilled. History repeats of itself. And here in the Old Symbolic Code, I would like to read to you this reading. 3 symbolic code 11 to 12, page 10 and page 11. Ponder deeply, it says, moreover, after the death of its reformer, the churches which they founded fell into the hands of foolish shepherds who were reaching out after numbers rather than after real converts. Brothers and sisters, one of the medium God employed to rescue His people is parabolical prophecy. And Christ will never contradict His own teaching. I think that is in Desire of Ages 149. Christ will not contradict His own teaching. That in the parable in Matthew 13, that when the heavenly called founder died, the devil saw the tares. That is very plain. And we can prove that. First, this statement in 3 symbolic code 11 to 12, page 10. After the death of its reformer. Now, let me read to you different passages in the Shepherd's Rod publications. First, track number 3. Track number 3 on page, let's read the statement given by the Shepherd's Rod. It says here, brothers and sisters, that page 61, 60 and 61. The evil of allowing the devil freely to sow the tares among the wheat has existed in the Christian church since the passing of the apostles. So, that is the heavenly called founder, the 12 apostles. Now, here's another statement in track number 4. On page 20, it says, in the Christian era, the church started out in an even more advantageous spiritual condition than in the Jewish era. Besides, she could have profited by the example of the fallen Jews. But as the verses just quoted reveal, she utterly failed to do so. Instead, as with the passing of Joshua, the Jews began to depart from their God, so with the passing of the apostles, the Christian drifted likewise. Now, here's another statement in 2SR. 2SR page, although there are many passages, but just to read some portion. 2SR 103. The early Christian church, in like manner, was dragged into the dark ages as soon as the apostles passed away. Satan marshaled his agent, men of renown, into the church. The already blinded leaders laid their hands on men, not from the viewpoint of consecration, but from distinction, and thus made them shepherds of the flock. In the darkest hour of the Christian church, God, by the hand of Luther, called the attention of the multitude to the terrible deception, but few who were ready to listen to the humble monk. One would imagine that the most intellectual would be the first to see the light in the plain thus saith the Lord. Luther, with a great struggle, and at the rest of his life, founded the Lutheran denomination. But as he passed away, that movement in like manner was corrupted and hardened against new light on the Word of God. And what is the statement given by the Shepherd's Rod? Here in 1SR 220, but as the shrewd enemy succeeded to fall down the first, he proceeded to use the same method to the last. What method? After the heavenly called founder. Immediately, brothers and sisters, the movement fall into the hands of uninspired men. Here in answerer number 1, it says here, answerer number 1 on page 65. Thus we see that the Reformation, which originally under the direction of inspired men, lifted the church out of one morass, later under the direction of uninspired men, plunged her into another, wherein she has been plundering ever since. So that is what the word of Jesus Christ in His parable. And who are they, the thieves? Brothers and sisters, it says here in answerer number 2, page 47, the flood and tares are figurative equivalents. Flood and tares are figurative equivalents. Here in 2TG 24, on page 24, it says, finally, what could be the dragon's flood? Remember, flood and tares are figurative equivalents. Comment from the dragon. Finally, what could be the dragon's flood that proceeds out of his mouth, if not dragon prompted interpreters of the scriptures, through whom he expects to cause the church to be carried away? Truly, the self-appointed prophets in Israel of today are more in number than were the prophets in Elijah's day. How many false prophets in Elijah's day? 850, according to Testimonies Volume 3 and Prophets and Kings. But B.T. Horeb says, in the antitype, it is more in number. It must be more than 800. So, the prophets of Baal cannot be applied only to those who claim that they were inspired. It is opposite. The statement in 2TG 41, brothers and sisters, page 7. Who are they, the prophets of Baal? Those who declared that what they teach and preach is what they themselves discovered by deep study and research. The Word of God can never be discovered by deep study and research. Only by the Spirit of Christ. Only by inspiration. Jezreel letter 2, page 2. Truth indeed never come in any other way but by inspiration. And they were only fulfilling the prophecy because they established a biblical research committee, brothers and sisters. Uninspired men passing judgment on inspired truth. Now, here the statement in 3 Symbolic Code 11 to 12, page 11. 3 Symbolic Code 11 to 12, page 11. It says, "We as members of Mount Carmel Center are greatly honored to carry this reformatory message to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, of which we ourselves are a part. And as this responsibility has fallen upon us, we should bear in mind, ponder deeply this statement given by the prophet. We should bear in mind that we, as those before us, are in great danger of losing out." So there is no eternal favor. Great danger of losing out. And brothers and sisters, all the movements that came after the heavenly called founder died, by which there is no time prophecy, it is represented by Ishmael, came to that holy office because of favorable opportunity. And that favorable opportunity, that is the time when the heavenly called founder died. They voluntarily come to the front and then organize, brothers and sisters. But there is no calling from God because there is no time prophecy. God's movement comes always in time prophecy. Now here in 1SR Packet Edition, page 63, it says, Isaac, the firstborn son, through promise, through the will of God, can only represent a class of ministers who are placed in that holy office through the promise, spiritual birthright, born again, divinely appointed. There must be a promise. There must be a divinely appointed time. Time prophecy. Then it says, Ishmael too, being Abraham's firstborn son, but not through legal marriage or promise, he circumstantially represent a class of carnal ministry who are led to that office not through spiritual birthright and a call from the Lord of the vineyard, but only through favorable opportunity. What circumstance? When the heavenly called founder died, then they immediately voluntarily came to the front and then organized, brothers and sisters, that is called Ishmaelites. Or in the study of the Assyrian Confederacy, they are represented by Maher-shalal Hasbaz, not Emmanuel, because Emmanuel is pre-existent. What does it mean by pre-existent? The existence of that movement is already predicted. There is a time prophecy. It says here in 1SR, page 68. Its movement rises in fulfillment of time prophecy. So, the movement which is of God rises in fulfillment of time prophecy. And that is represented by Emmanuel, by which it is pre-existent. Here in track number 14, on page, let's read, page 35. Having been pre-existent with his father, Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1 and 2, John chapter 1, verse 1 and 2, and then having been reborn in Bethlehem, Emmanuel manifestly represents the born-again Christians, John 3 verse 3, whereas never having been pre-existent, Maher-shalal Hasbaz can only symbolize those not born again, that part of the church membership which cannot be represented by Emmanuel because there was no time prophecy. Maher-shalal Hasbaz is not pre-existent, represented by Ishmael, came to that holy office because of favorable opportunity. Now, let us go back to our subject, brothers and sisters, concerning Amos 1 verse 2 and then go to Micah 7 verse 14. Now, Amos 1 verse 2, brothers and sisters. So, let us go back again to Amos 1 verse 2 and Micah 7 verse 14. Now, here the shepherd's rod is plainly telling us that Amos 1 verse 2 is a prophecy. It was not fulfilled in the days of Horeb, brothers and sisters, because the prophecy in Amos 1 verse 2 is the top of Carmel. The top of Carmel was established, that is the altar of Jehovah, after the great apostasy. After the time by which the only altar that had been established in Mount Carmel are the altars of Baal. And I do fully believe, brothers and sisters, that the word top, the same with Isaiah chapter 2, the same with Micah chapter 4. Meaning, brothers and sisters, that altar represent reformation. We know that altar represent reformation. Therefore, that is pointing to the predicted revival and reformation by which the message that had been bestowed by God into that movement is the highest. It is the top, the highest of all shepherd's rod believers, because the promise that God will bestow all His goods is antitypical Elijah the Tishbite. Now, I would like to read first 2SR 179. 2SR 179, it says, "Who then is a faithful and wise servant whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household to give them to the world meat in due season," present truth. Verse 45. Note that there is a question as to whom this faithful servant could be. If that people to whom primarily this gospel was committed had been faithful, then the following promise would have been theirs. What is the promise? "Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods." Verses 46 and 47. The significance of all his goods is, first, the finishing of the gospel, bringing everlasting righteousness, and ushering in the kingdom of Christ. What a wonderful promise. Now the question is, who is this servant? 11 symbolic code number 3, page 6. 11 symbolic code number 3, page 5 and 6. Page 5. "Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods." Then it says, page 6, "This is speaking of him who faithfully gives meat in due season." The goods is present truth. We are told in Malachi that before the great and terrible day of the Lord, Elijah is to come. Then when Elijah appears, his message will be present truth. So who is that servant that God promised that unto him God will bestow all his goods? Brothers and sisters, that is antitypical Elijah the Tishbite. So, establishing the altar of God in the top of Carmel, in the antitype, is no longer literal. It is symbolical that the message that had been bestowed by God into that movement, into that revival and reformation, brothers and sisters, is the highest. It is established in the highest ridge of the mountains, and mountains represents movements, organizations. Now, I would like to read Prophets and Kings. Brothers and sisters, here in Prophets and Kings, it says here, on page 121, Prophets and Kings 120 and 121. "To Elijah was entrusted the mission of delivering to Ahab heaven's message of judgment. He did not seek to be the Lord's messenger. The word of the Lord came to him." Or in other words, Elijah the Tishbite, he did not voluntarily offer himself to be the Lord's messenger, but it is God who chose him. The word of the Lord came to him, and jealous for the honor of God's cause, he did not hesitate to obey the divine summons, though to obey seemed to invite swift destruction at the hand of the wicked king. Now, brothers and sisters, only Elijah the Tishbite of old, by which you can read the statement, summons. God committed to Elijah the Tishbite of old the divine summons. Therefore, in the antitype, brothers and sisters, the antitypical Elijah is also the one who will deliver the heavenly summons. Of course, that heavenly summons must be, brothers and sisters, a divine summon. Now, I would like to read here in page 143 in Prophets and Kings. Something unusual was about to happen. So something unusual was about to happen. Else, why this summons to gather at Carmel? What new calamity was about to fall upon the people and the land? So there is a summons to gather at Carmel. Now, brothers and sisters, as far as the Bible and the Spirit Prophecy and the Shepherd's Rod publications are thus concerned, according to the General Conference Special on page 30 and page 31, it says, "Moreover, we all know that the work of typical Elijah was to do away with the prophets and priests who serve Baal instead of God." Brethren, it is high time now to humbly admit that Withered is not antitypical Elijah the Tishbite. Withered is antitypical Elijah John the Baptist. You cannot show to us in the Bible, because Withered says, I would like to read first answerer. Then go back to this reading. In answerer number 1, let's read the statement. On page 23. Clearly, therefore, her work must never be interpreted in such a way as to contradict the Bible, but always to clear it. If you undeviatingly follow this absolute rule of interpretation, you can never possibly have any trouble with the rod or with any message the Lord may ever send. So if, brothers and sisters, if we follow this absolute rule, and debatingly follow this absolute rule, that the Shepherd's Rod publications must be used to clear the Bible, then we would have no trouble. All the messages recorded in the Shepherd's Rod. Now, we need to follow that absolute rule to clear the Bible. Now, this is now the honest and serious question. Since B.T. Hotep used the word antitype, right? One symbolic code, number 13, page 1 and 2, that Mount Carmel is the antitype of the Carmel of old. What is the statement given by the Shepherd's Rod concerning typological events? One is our pocket edition on page 73. It says, all these modern occurrences being perfectly matched with the ancient ones, both in time and objective. So, brothers and sisters, we need to ponder deeply that type and antitype should perfectly match. The same with the statement in answerer number 3. On page 23, it says, in all the annals of church history, since the Exodus movement, the rod message is the only one which calls for just such a movement and which exactly fits the type. Exactly fits the type, brothers and sisters. So, perfectly match. The type and antitype should exactly fits and perfectly match. That is the statement. Now, we need now to match the page of history. What is history? The type. With the page of prophecy. What is the prophecy? The antitype. I would like to read that statement in track number 12. Track number 12, the statement given here. Page 64 and 65. In the light of these foregone fundamental facts, we should now be able to rightly evaluate the unfolding of the scroll and to intelligently match the page of prophecy with the page of history. Here's a statement in 1888, saying, brothers and sisters, that history, let me see. So, let's read. Written by Alonzo Jones. History is the only true commentary on the prophecies. And the only true exposition of the prophecies is to set down together the history and the prophecy. Because history, as it really is but the complement of prophecy as it is written. Only it is written, I've quoted to you. So prophecy and history should exactly fit the history. That is the type. What is the statement in 1 SR 226? Pictured with unmistakable evidence. Now, I would like now to write the history. History of Mount Carmel. History of Mount Carmel. So, first, so this is the period of time. There was a period of time by which Mount Carmel is flourishing. Very beautiful. Then what happened to Mount Carmel? Gradually. It is not immediately, but gradually dried up, languishing. Then, because of that, God raised up Elijah the Tishbite. Elijah the Tishbite. For what purpose? Brothers and sisters, to awaken the senses of God's people that Mount Carmel is controlled by the prophets of Baal. All the altars that can be found in Mount Carmel is only the altars of Baal, and the altar of Jehovah is completely broken. And that is the prophecy of Amos 1 verse 2. That is the prophecy of Amos 1 verse 2. The tragedy that took place in the days of Elijah. What tragedy? Brothers and sisters, because they had been given to choose whether they will choose the established. Because that is the statement in volume 3 and Prophets and Kings. When Elijah visited the people in Mount Carmel, there is no altar of Jehovah at that time. And the only altar which is fully established is the altars of Baal. And that is the testing ground whether you will believe the prophets of Baal who control Mount Carmel, or whether you will believe the message of Elijah that God raised up, brothers and sisters, to inform the people in Mount Carmel that they were following the prophets of Baal. That is the history. Now, how could you match in the antitype? Brothers and sisters, it's easy. From 1935 to 1955, Mount Carmel at that time is flourishing. But what happened, according to the shepherd's rod, when the heavenly co-founder died? It was under the uninspired men, the prophets of Baal, brothers and sisters. So, we are now about to witness this tragedy, brothers and sisters. Now, I would like to go back, brothers and sisters, too. In this study, the last generation of men, the last church is, or had been provided by God by many pictures. Moses, Elijah, David, Ezekiel, Isaiah. Brothers and sisters, there are many illustrations given by God to His people. But concerning Amos 1 verse 2, it is only pointing to Mount Carmel. Only pointing to Mount Carmel, brothers and sisters. But Micah 7 verse 14, although Carmel is also mentioned in that verse, but it was attached Bashan and Gilead. Brothers and sisters, these two places, Bashan and Gilead, in the historical event, can be explained only by the first Exodus. They did not possess Bashan, brothers and sisters, and Gilead, not until they came out from Egypt. So by the typological events, you can easily discern that this so-called Bashan today is not the fulfillment of Micah 7:14. That is counterfeit. Brothers and sisters, you need to look at Micah 7 verse 14 in the picture in the past. Now let us read Micah chapter 7. So let us read that verse, brothers and sisters. Micah chapter 7 on verse 14 and 15. Feed thy people with thy rod, the flock of thine heritage, which dwell solitary in the wood, in the midst of Carmel. Let them feed in Bashan and Gilead as in the days of old. So the statement, as in the days of old, meaning the Bible is telling us, look at the type. If you will say Carmel, then that is pointing to Elijah, the Tishbite. If you will be concerning Bashan and Gilead, that is pointing to the first Exodus. As a matter of fact, verse 15 says, according to the days. So the answer is found in verse 15. According to the days of thy coming out of the land of Egypt, will I show unto him marvelous things. That is very plain, brothers and sisters. Now, I would like to read to you 1 TG number 28. 1 TG number 28. 1 TG number 28, page 13. Ponder deeply. Because 1 TG 28:13 is the summarization of the entire chapter of Micah 7. This afternoon, we are to study the 7th chapter of Micah. So what is the main subject? Micah chapter 7. These chapters brings to our attention 3 divisions of time. How many divisions of time? 3. 3 divisions of time in which 3 different conditions obtained on the earth. The earth mentioned here, brothers and sisters, it's not literal earth. It points out to the symbolical earth. And then it says, the first condition is recorded in the first 4 verses. So, let us now enumerate one by one. Micah, chapter 7. So, 3 divisions. 3 divisions of time. What is the first division? This is the first division. Micah 7, 1 to 4. And what is the second division? Micah 7, verse 5 to verse 14. What is the third division? Verse 15 up to, how many verses? I think verse 20, right? Up to verse 20. So this is the 3 divisions. First division, second division, and third. Now, look at, brothers and sisters. What is the first division? Verse 1 to 4. Now, let us read, brothers and sisters, verse 1. It says, 1 TG 28:13. So, let us study closely, brethren, this prophecy. Micah chapter 7. Because it was grossly, brothers and sisters, misinterpreted. Now, it says here, 1 TG 28, page 13. Woe is me! For I am as when they have gathered the summer fruits, as the great gleanings of the vintage. There is no cluster to it. My soul desired the first ripe fruit. What is the first division? Begin with the statement, woe is me. Then verse 2 it says, the good man is perished out of the earth, and there is none upright among men. That is the first division. Ponder deeply. The first division. When that first division begins, brothers and sisters, it could not be in the time of Sister White, neither in the time of Withered. This first division can only be answered by reading the first verse of the second division, Micah 7 verse 5. That is the first verse of the second division. Now, I would like to read to you 1 SR 219 and 220. 1 SR 219 and 220. To the prophet Isaiah, this great apostasy, fostered by blind spiritual guides, was revealed, which he describes in the following scriptures. And he saw that there was no man, and wondered that there was no intercessor. Therefore his arm brought salvation unto him, and his righteousness it sustained him. Isaiah 59:16. And I looked, and there was none to help, and I wondered that there was none to uphold. Therefore mine own arm brought salvation unto me, and my fury it upheld me. Isaiah 63 verse 5. Micah, looking forward to this wholesale deception, says, trust ye not in a friend, put you not a confidence in a guide. The statement 1 SR 219-220, the three prophetic verses, Withered called it Isaiah 59:16, Isaiah 63:5, great apostasy, Micah 7 verse 5, wholesale deception or wholesale apostasy. Brothers and sisters, now ponder deeply. One truth dovetailing another. I have said that earth here is symbolical earth. And the answer is found in Isaiah 59. I would like to read Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1. Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, page 355. Let us read 355 and 356. I was pointed to Isaiah 58, Volume 1, 355 and 356. I was pointed to Isaiah 58, Isaiah 59, verse 1 to 15, Jeremiah 14, verse 10 to 12, as a description of the present state of our nation. Of course, that is United States of America, because Sister White, that is her nation, United States of America. The people of this nation have forsaken and forgotten God. They have chosen other gods and followed their own corrupt ways until God has turned from them. Volume 1, 355 and 356. Now look at the statement in 1 SR 150. It says here, verse 16, first part, and he saw that there was no man, and wondered there was no intercessor. God was astonished. Moses and Aaron stood between the dead and the living. Numbers 16 verse 48. God used Elijah on Mount Carmel. Why is it that God used Elijah on Mount Carmel? Because Mount Carmel is in great apostasy. Study closely. Why our Almighty God raised up a typical Elijah that is by of old? Because all the altars that had been established in Mount Carmel are the altars of Baal, according to the Bible, according to the spirit of prophecy. Therefore, God raised up Elijah the Tishbite. And at that time, they need to choose whether they will follow the established organization of the prophets of Baal in Mount Carmel, or Elijah that cometh, brothers and sisters, from the place by which they did not know. God sent Elijah. But according to the prophecy, in this crisis, God will no longer send Elijah. And it says, God finds no man. It says here, brothers and sisters, God used Elijah on Mount Carmel. 1 Kings chapter 18. In the crisis here brought to view, God finds no man. Ezekiel 22 verse 30. So he himself interposes. Then we will show to you how God interposes. If you will say, brothers and sisters, that there is still a man of God in the United States of America, is tantamount to declare that God is a liar. What is Isaiah 59? 1 Testimonies for the Church, 355, point to our nation. Who said that? Sister White. What is the nation of Sister White? United States of America. There was no man. In Bible commentary, let us read. I think 3 BC, concerning Isaiah 59:16. The statement says, the situation hopeless, and the only hope is God. God intervention. So let us read Bible commentary. Have you found it? Now, let us continue to our reading, brothers and sisters. So what does it mean, the statement in verse 2, that the good man is perished out of the earth? Brothers and sisters, we're not saying that all the man there is bad man, but the good man mentioned here is inspired servant of God. Therefore, the first condition, it must be, brothers and sisters, after Withered died. After Withered died. That is the reality, brothers and sisters. Now, here, brothers and sisters, the voice of inspiration saying that the second condition is Micah 7 verse 5. What is Micah 7 verse 5? Wholesale deception. What does it mean by wholesale? That is why, brothers and sisters, the voice of inspiration says here in 1SR, page 153, it says, the first verse and part of the second apply to Christ himself. At the beginning of his ministry, the spirit of prophecy says it will repeat itself with the people of God. This would find its fulfillment in the time of harvest with the 144,000. Those who escaped the ruin of Isaiah 59 and Isaiah 63. What is the ruin of Isaiah 59 and 63? Great apostasy. To escape that ruin is to get out from that great apostasy. Now, this is the description of the 144,000 of such great apostasy. 1SR 222. 1SR 222. Though such great apostasy and blasphemy has gripped the world, God's church, 144,000 in number, is scattered throughout the length and breadth of the earth without a shepherd, have not bowed a knee to Baal. Why is it that they have no shepherd? Because they escaped from that great apostasy. What is the great apostasy? All the movements in the United States of America are led and guided by the prophets of Baal. There is no man of God. That is very plain. Brothers and sisters, prophecy, brothers and sisters, never fails to tell the truth. Therefore, before you could arrive on verse 14 and 15, you need to pass first verse 5, Micah 7 verse 5. What is Micah 7 verse 5? Wholesale deception. So, in this study, in 1 TG 28, 13 and 14, plainly telling you and I, brothers and sisters, that statement in Micah 7 verse 14, I would like to read again. It says, feed thy people with thy rod. Who is he that had been commanded by God to feed God's people with his rod? Let us read Answerer. Answerer number 3, pages 32 and 33. Answerer number 3, page 32 and 33. As a necessary and natural sequence, God will have but one mouthpiece to teach his people in the establishing of his kingdom. As he prophetically tells us in unmistakable language, and I will set up one shepherd over them, and he shall feed them, even my servant David, he shall feed them, and he shall be their shepherd, and I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David, a prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken it, and I will make with them a covenant of peace, and will cause the evil beast to cease out of the land, and they shall dwell safely in the wilderness, and sleep in the woods. And I will make them and the places round about my hill a blessing. And I will cause the shower to come down in his season. There shall be showers of blessing. Ezekiel 34 verse 23 to 26. The Lord's voice cried unto the city, and the man of wisdom shall see thy name. Hear ye the rod, and what appointed it. Feed thy people with thy rod, the flock of thine heritage, which dwell solitarily in the wood, in the midst of Carmel. Let them feed in Bashan and in Gilead as in the days of old, according to the days of thy coming out of the land of Egypt, which will I show unto him marvelous things. Therefore, brothers and sisters, Micah 7, verse 14 and 15 is coupled together. It cannot be separated because the fulfillment of verse 14 is answered in verse 15. According to the days of thy coming out of the land of Egypt, because Bashan and Gilead is located outside of Egypt, and United States of America is antitypical Goshen, and there was no Bashan and Gilead in Goshen. Now let us read 1SR page 76. The land of Goshen stands as a symbol of the United States of America, in which the church came into existence. Someone say that there is no Carmel in Goshen either. Yes, because brothers and sisters, if you will be talking Carmel, then that prophecy must be linked to Elijah. If you will talking about rod, that prophecy must be linked to Moses, not to Elijah, because Elijah has no rod. But the statement, brothers and sisters, feed with thy rod. When does, brothers and sisters, God gave the rod to Moses. That is at the time when Moses get out his people out from Egypt. So this prophecy is very plain. But the mere fact that it says, brothers and sisters, that who are they, the people? The flock of thine heritage. They are the people which dwell solitarily in the wood. It is a figurative speech pointing to the event by which, why is it that they dwell solitarily? Because they have no shepherd, brothers and sisters. Among the Davidians in the United States of America, the true people of God, the 144,000, they came out from such great apostasy. They escaped the ruin in Isaiah 59 and Isaiah 63. What is the ruin in Isaiah 59 and Isaiah 63? Great apostasy. And this is the statement in 1 SR 222. Though such great apostasy and blasphemy has gripped the world, God church, 144,000 in number, is scattered throughout the length and breadth of the earth. At that time, the description of the 144,000 without a shepherd. So to know the 144,000, who they are those who pass the period of time by which all of them is scattered throughout the whole world without a shepherd. Then after that event, God will gather them, brothers and sisters, one by one, and David will feed them. That is the actual event of the prophetic event, brothers and sisters. So there must be a period of time by which the 144,000 is scattered throughout the whole world without a shepherd. When? At the time of that great apostasy. The same with the statement in 2SR. Here in 2SR page 107, it says, out of this great apostasy, you see, out of this great apostasy, the message of Revelation 7 verse 1 to 8 will seal and save 144,000 saints. Out of this great apostasy, brothers and sisters, 144,000, they will escape such wholesale deception, such great apostasy, brothers and sisters. The Bible is perfect, brothers and sisters. What is the great apostasy? The important to them is the name, brothers and sisters. That is the statement in Isaiah chapter 4. And they are not bothered whether the present truth is in their movement or not. The most important to them is the name of the headquarters. And they were expending all their efforts on that point, brothers and sisters. But I would like to read to you some statement in the shepherd's rod. And please tell me, brothers and sisters, if the statement recorded here is not perfect, brothers and sisters. Now, I would like to begin on, I think, track number 14. Track number 14. On page 45, it says, Nahum chapter 1, verse 1 to 9. The burden of Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahum, the Elkoshite. God is jealous, and the Lord revengeth. The Lord revengeth and is furious, for his enemies have destroyed his vineyard. What happened to God's vineyard? The enemies destroyed it. What is the vineyard? Palestine. So here, brothers and sisters, is completely revealed what happened to God's vineyard. It was destroyed by the enemies of God. And it says, I would like to go to page 46. He rebuketh the sea, and maketh it dry, and drieth up all the rivers. But men and their ships go down therein to rise no more. Bashan languisheth, and Carmel, and the flower of Lebanon languisheth. The mountains quake at him, and the hills melt, and the hills melt. What happened to, brothers and sisters, to God's vineyard? It was destroyed by the enemies. And it says, what happened to Bashan? What happened to Carmel? To Lebanon? Languisheth. This is the statement given by the shepherd's rod, brothers and sisters, in track number 14, page 45 and page 46. Now tell me, who is the Bashan mentioned here that languisheth? Who is the Carmel? And who is the Lebanon here mentioned that languisheth? In track number 9, it says here, the shepherd's rod is plainly telling that this prophecy will be fulfilled in the time of the end. Now, track number 9, let me see if I can find that statement. Concerning that verses that we have been quoted, the fulfillment of that event, it says in page 29, track number 9. God is jealous, declares the prophet Nahum in his vision of the time of the end. Then quoted Nahum chapter 1 to verse 2 to 9. The same quotation we read in track number 14, 45, and 46. When would be this
prophecy will be fulfilled in the time of the end. What is the time of the end? That is from 1844 onwards, right? In the old symbolic code, it says, 3 symbolic code number 8 to 10, page 8. 3 symbolic code 8 to 10, page 8. It says, this time must have begun when the book began to be opened. But if we must declare the beginning of that time in more specific terms, it in a spatial sense began in the year 1844. So the time of the end began in the year 1844. So the vineyard mentioned there is the modern vineyard, United States of America. What is vineyard? Palestine. Tract number 12 on page 43. It says, to begin with, we see from this scripture that the woman left her vineyard, homeland, Palestine. What is the modern Palestine? 1 SR 158. And here, brothers and sisters, America is also called Edom. Let us read 157 and 158 in 1 SR. The people shall hear and be afraid. Sorrow shall take hold on the inhabitants of Palestina. Then the dukes of Edom shall be amazed. The mighty men of Moab, trembling shall take hold upon them. All the inhabitants of Canaan shall melt away. Fear and dread shall fall upon them. By the greatness of thine arm, they shall be as still as a stone. Till thy people pass over, O Lord, till thy people pass over, which thou hast purchased. The land of Canaan represents the land into which the church at this present time came into existence, namely the United States of America. The name Palestina means land of strangers. The United States is composed of strangers, people from many nations and races. Dukes of Edom refers to the same class as those mentioned in Isaiah 63, as previously explained. The name Moab means progeny or forefathers. You see, brothers and sisters? And what is the statement given by the shepherd's rod? What happened to Palestine or the land of Edom? Here in 2TG number 20, it says here, 2TG 20, page 21. Obviously, this is a prophecy of Christ having taken the reins in his own hands. Testimonies to Ministers, page 300. Such is his righteousness that we are urged to know. Concretely speaking, knowing the righteousness of Christ is knowing wholeheartedly that in the latter days, he is to take the scepter, that he is to reign, that at the outset, he is to smite the corners of Moab and destroy all the children of Shet, that Edom and Seir shall be a possession for his enemies. What does it mean by the word possession? That is the enemies of God that destroyed his vineyard. And what is Edom and Moab? That is pointing to the United States of America. Now, I would like to read to you and 1TG number 9 and read it again and again. 1TG number 9, page 5. The Lord also shall save the tents of Judah first, that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not magnify themselves against Judah. He shall save the tents, the humble dwellings, rather than the houses or palaces of Judah first. That is, the Lord is to save first the common people, the laity, so that the ministry may not exalt themselves above the laity, that all may learn to give glory to God, not to any man. Who are the laity? Brothers and sisters, it points out to Ruhamah and Amai, Jezreel, Ruhamah and Amai. And they have no houses, they have no palaces. What they have is only tents, humble dwellings. They were not boasting. Unlike with these people, they boasted their houses or palaces. What is palaces? Headquarters. So that people represented by Judah, they have no headquarters because they typified by Elijah, by which, brothers and sisters, when God gave the message to Elijah, Elijah has no headquarters. Can any Davidian prove in the Bible history that when God raised up Elijah the Tishbite, Elijah is residing in Mount Carmel? Gave one verse and gave us also one passage, either in the writings of Sister White and B.T. Hotep, that ancient Elijah the Tishbite resided on Mount Carmel. Just produce the evidence, and we will produce to you plenty of evidences. For example, I would like to read Prophets and Kings. Here in Prophets and Kings, it says here, 167, Elijah's retreat on Mount Horeb, due hidden from men, was known to God, and the weary and discouraged prophet was not left to struggle alone with the powers of darkness that were pressing upon him. So, here's another, the place by which God, the retreat of Elijah, it is Mount Horeb. Now, here's another. Brothers and sisters, I would like to read here in 168. God met his tried servant with the inquiry, Why what doest thou here, Elijah? I sent you to the brook Cherith, and afterward to the widow of Sarepta. I commissioned you to return to Israel, and to stand before the idolatrous priest on Carmel. Who resided on Mount Carmel? The idolatrous priest, the prophets of Baal, not Elijah, brothers and sisters. Now here in 169, go, the Lord commanded Elijah, return on thy way to the wilderness of Damascus. Now, let us read another statement here, brothers and sisters. We know that Elijah was on that place of that widow, by which God cared Elijah, right? So, there is no such record in the history, brothers and sisters, that Elijah the Tishbite resided on Mount Carmel. Contrary-wise, the only one that resided on Mount Carmel are all the priests and prophets of Baal, not Elijah. And that is the reason why Withered cannot be antitypical Elijah the Tishbite. Because the time by which Withered resided on Mount Carmel, that is the time, brothers and sisters, by which Mount Carmel is flourishing. That is the time by which Mount Carmel was still flourishing. But when Withered died, history repeats itself. There are many altars of Baal that had been established in Mount Carmel. So it says here in 129, in Prophets and Kings, for a time Elijah remained hidden in the mountains by the brook Cherith. There for many months he was miraculously provided with food. Later on, when because of the continued drought, the brook became dry, God bade his servant find refuge in a heathened land. Arise, he bade him, go thee to Sarepta, or Sarepta, known in New Testament times as Sarepta, which belongeth to Sidon, and dwell there. Behold, I have commanded a widow woman there to sustain thee. Prophets and Kings, page 129. You see, brothers and sisters, prophecy is typological prophecy, brothers and sisters, never fails to tell the truth. The picture tells the whole story. So, what happened to the houses? Now, I would like to read here in 1 Symbolic Code number 14, page 6. Remember, the house of Judah, they have no houses. They have no palaces. What they have are only tents. And the record, God would save the humble dwellings of Judah. It says here in 1 Symbolic Code number 14, page 6, with a few comments on the above scripture, any Bible student will recognize at a glance that it applies at the time of the end, as explained by the gospel prophet. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains. You see, brothers and sisters, attached by Withered, Joel 2 verse 11 to Amos 1 verse 2. The top of Carmel. The same with the statement in volume 3 that at the end of that great apostasy, God commanded Elijah to establish the altar of Jehovah in the highest ridge of the mountains. Why is it that it was inscribed in plural form, while in reality, there is only one Mount Carmel of old? Because although there is only one Mount Carmel of old, but there are many altars of the prophets of Baal that had been established. So the top of Carmel mentioned here, brothers and sisters, is pointing to the message that had been given by God to antitypical Elijah the Tishbite, because God make him ruler over all his goods. Now it says here, as Amos says, the habitation of the shepherds shall mourn. And of course, the shepherds mentioned here is the prophets of Baal. It is obvious that Amos' prophecy is yet future. For the word habitations, places, is in plural form, which cannot be applied to one shepherd's habitation, denomination, but to all that be in existence at that time. But it will be pointing only to all the leadership among the Bidia. Because God cannot gather the 144,000 living saints with this divided the Bidia today. There must be something unusual that will happen, brothers and sisters. And we will read to you all that predicted event recorded in the Shepherd's Rod publications. All the stumbling blocks must be removed. How could God gather the 144,000 to the Davidians while the Davidians are fighting against each other? God does not work in that way, brothers and sisters. And therefore, there must be something will happen unusual. But, brothers and sisters, do not wait for that time, because that time, when the material side appear, brothers and sisters, it could not profit you anymore. I remember the statement in 1 TG 12:25. It says, doubters as a rule, wait until there is unquestionable evidence before they acknowledge that the message is from God, but it may not do them any good at that late hour. 1 TG number 12, page 25. Then it says, brothers and sisters, the term shepherd means, as understood, the same as the ancient men which were before the house, the ministers. Note that the shepherds are not themselves to mourn, but their habitations, their houses, that is the membership of their churches, which fact reveals that it will be thus at the time when the sleeping multitude in the churches awake from their spiritual insensibility and find that the shepherds whom they have implicitly trusted for their salvation have deceived all those who followed them. It did not say have deceived some, but had deceived all those who followed them. All of them who followed these false shepherds, the prophets of Baal. Brothers and sisters, the time will come that they will cry out bitterly. But before that time, the 144,000 is no longer under these shepherds because they are scattered throughout the length and breadth of the earth without a shepherd. But these people, they followed the shepherds. Brothers and sisters, these are the foolish virgins. But the 144,000, they were no longer under the umbrella of these shepherds because they had been able to escape prior to that time. And that is the reason why God showed the vision to Sister White that the 144,000 is scattered throughout the length and the breadth of the earth without a shepherd. And that is logically prior to the time when Jesus Christ will arrive and God will give them David as their shepherd. They must pass a period of time by which they have no shepherd, brothers and sisters. But the foolish virgins, they followed these shepherds and ignorantly followed them, not knowing that they were prophets of Baal. They will mourn and lament bitterly, brothers and sisters. Why is it that the shepherds did not mourn? We will continue that portion, brothers and sisters, and we will show to you the reason why it is only their memberships that will mourn. Something happened unusual. That is the statement in volume 3. The word unusual, brothers and sisters, unexpected. And the membership shall lament and mourn. It is opposite to the Seventh-day Adventist Church because it is the leadership that shall lament and mourn. The gates. Therefore, Amos 1 verse 2 must be applied only to all shepherd's rod believers. All the leadership professing shepherd's rod, brothers and sisters, and all false leadership which is not appointed by God, all of them will be removed. The stumbling blocks must be removed. Hoping that we will awake to reality before that protected event will happen. Hoping that we will escape, brothers and sisters, such wholesale deception. To repeat, Micah 7 divided into 3 divisions. 3 divisions that will happen in the symbolical earth. The first division, what is the first division? It points out to the righteous. The righteous, they were already longing for meat in due season, but they could not find. Because the good man perished. The same with Isaiah 57:1. The good man mentioned here, in that verse, in Micah 7 verse 2, is pointing to God's inspired servant. So in the very first division itself, points out after Beti-Hotep died. And then, it gradually, the apostasy is gradual until it arrived into verse 5, Micah 7 verse 5. What is Micah 7 verse 5? Wholesale apostasy. Wholesale deception. Great apostasy. Attached to Isaiah 59:16 and Isaiah 63 verse 5. What is Isaiah 59? Pointing to the United States of America, volume 1, 355. So what is verse 14? It is still unfulfilled, brothers and sisters. It is still unfulfilled. Going out of Egypt. According to the days when you go out of Egypt. So verse 15 answer the fulfillment of verse 14. And who are they, the people to be fed? Those who dwell solitarily. Why is it solitarily? Because they have no shepherd. Brothers and sisters. Although they are among the Media, Carmel, Bashan, and Gilead. But solitarily, they live in the wood. Brothers and sisters. Is it plural? Singular. That is singular, right? Let's read again the Bible. Micah 7. Micah chapter 7 on verse 14. Feed thy people with thy rod, the flock of thine heritage, which dwell solitarily in the wood. It did not say, which dwell solitarily in the woods. It is inscribed in singular form. Feed thy people with thy rod, the flock of thine heritage, which dwell solitarily in the wood, in the midst of Carmel. Let them feed in Bashan and Gilead as in the days of old. So who are they? The people, brothers and sisters, that dwell solitarily in the wood, in the midst of Carmel. What does it mean? Among the Bidia, because Carmel pointing to the Bidia. Among the Bidia, there is God's people did not bow their knee to Baal. They never considered the shepherds there as God's servants. And that is why they have no shepherd, because they understood that those shepherds are not of God, and they were waiting the Lord when the Lord will take the reins in His own hands. By which at that time, God will give them David as their shepherd. When God will arrive, Jesus Christ, they themselves will appoint that man as the prince among them. So here, brothers and sisters, Micah 7 verse 14 and 15 being the boundary of the second division and the third division, it is still unfulfilled. It is still unfulfilled. Because who commanded to feed God's people? Jesus Christ. That event will be fulfilled at the time when Jesus Christ will visit the earth, and that is the fulfillment of the event, brothers and sisters, by which it is no longer far distant. So we will continue this subject on our next episode. Thank you very much for listening and viewing this program. May the good Lord bless you and have a beautiful, wonderful evening.